state of North Dakota, a protest by Native Americans there turns violent after demonstrators criticize the construction of a pipeline on a field they consider sacred land.
Well, they tried to push us back with their trucks and their bulldozers, but we just kept on coming, and we just pushed them all the way back over the hill now.
And officials say that 4 security guards were injured, one taken to nearby hospital with undisclosed injuries. Meanwhile, Native American elders say that at least 30 protesters were pepper sprayed. The demonstrators say construction crews have destroyed burial and cultural sites there. They're also worried about the possible contamination of a nearby river by the project. A federal judge will rule before September 9th whether construction can be halted on the Dakota Access Pipeline.
Okay, I want to say all praises be to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone and to all the brothers out there doing the work in truth and sincerity. My name is Priest Ibad. And I want to go into the topic of this protest that turned violent over in North Dakota like 2 days ago. Esau, which is the so-called white man, he steals and he can never have enough. All right, and now he's further infringing on the lands that he gave the Native Americans, that he pushed them up into on the reservations. Now he's further infringing on their land. All right, and that's against the laws of the Bible. I'm going to go to Deuteronomy 27 and 17. All right, Deuteronomy 27 and 17. It says, "Cursed be he that removeth his neighbor's landmark." All right. So a landmark is anywhere that you have established for yourself. You know what I'm saying? You have claimed for yourself, for you, your family, your kindred, your near of kin. All right. And the so-called white man, when he came here to the shores of North America, what did he do? He removed his neighbor's landmark, which he removed the landmark of the Native Americans, the so-called North American Indians, and the Seminole Indians, all right, that were already dwelling here before he got here. And he butchered them, and he massacred them, and he stole their land, all right? So the Bible says, cursed is that man that does that, all right? I'm going to go to Proverbs 23 and 10 now. Proverbs 23, verse 10. It says, "Remove not the old landmark and enter not into the fields of the fatherless." All right. So when the so-called white man conquered, came in subtly, because at first he came subtly. He came like he was a friend of the natives that were here. Yeah, like he wanted to befriend them. But once he learned how to navigate through the land, how he learned how to plant crops, survive the winters here. What did he do? He ended up stabbing them in the back. All right, and that's how the so-called white man operates. His their biblical names are the Edomites. Okay, and the word Edom means red. That's why we say so-called white men, so-called white people, because they're really not white. They're really red. All right, and what color is the devil? The devil is red. All right. The so-called white man is the devil of the Bible, of the scriptures. The so-called white man, woman, and child, they are the devil, according to the Bible, okay? I'm going to go from here to John 10, verse 10. All right? Because everything the white man got, he stole. He stole everything. He got nothing but by thievery, robbery, and murder, which that was his blessing. When you read in the book of Genesis, 27th chapter, his blessing was the sword. Okay, that everything that he would gain by killing, by murdering, by genocide. All right, this is John chapter 10, verse 10. It says, the thief cometh not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. All right, and that's what the so-called white man did. When he came here, he slaughtered the natives that were living here. All right. First, they came from Spain. The first conquerors came from Spain, but then they came from France. They came from all over. Different classes of Edomites. You had the Spanish conquistadors. That enslaved those of Central and South America. Down in Brazil, Mexico. Central America and South America. They slaughtered all the natives that were dwelling here originally. Okay, so it says the thief cometh not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. Okay, so that's the point on that. So everything the white man has, he stole, and he can never have enough. All right, no matter how much he steals, he can never have enough. He can never be satisfied. And this is what it says. I'm going to the book of Obadiah, the 5th verse. It goes, well, I'll start at verse 1. It says, the vision of Obadiah. It says, and Obadiah was a prophet of the Heavenly Father. It says, thus saith the Lord power concerning Edom. Edom is the so-called white race as a whole. It says, I'm going to jump down. So I went there just to prove who the subject matter is. The subject matter is talking about Edom, or the so-called white race. Jump down to verse 5. It says, if thieves came to thee, if robbers by night, right? Like if a thief comes into your house, and he comes into your house at nighttime to rob you and steal from you, he's going to take, enough, and then he's going to be satisfied, and then he's going to leave, right? So it says, if thieves came to thee, if robbers by night, how art thou cut off? It says, would they not have stolen till they had enough? And the answer is yes, they would steal until they have enough. It says, if grape gatherers came to thee, would they not leave some grapes? Like if you have a vineyard, say you have a vineyard on your property, and you have people that come and take grapes from thee. They might be hungry. They might be hungry, so they might take some grapes. They're not going to take all of the grapes. They're going to take some and they're going to leave some. But Esau cannot be satisfied, The so-called white man, he can never have enough. That's why he keeps stealing and stealing and stealing. And going back to the video, I'm going to go back to the video now. That's what, these Gadites are angry and protesting about. Because here it is, they have already been pushed onto the reservations, They've been pushed onto pretty much what the reservations are, ghettos. They've been pushed onto these ghettos, these corners called reservations. And now the so-called white man is taking the land that the little bit of land that they have left, to make an oil pipeline. And he doesn't care if he rips up their ancient burial grounds, which are their cemeteries. He doesn't care. He's going to displace all those bodies just to fulfill his desire, his greed. All right. So I'm going to play a little more of the video.
Now joining us at Antigua is Mr. Ken O'Keefe, peace activist and former U.S. Marine. Hello, Mr. O'Keefe, back to Press TV's Top 5 once again. Now, Mr. O'Keefe, the Native Americans have been fighting to hold on to the little land that Washington has left them over the hundreds of years, and even that doesn't come without controversy at times. Your take?
Well, as an American-born son, I, of course, didn't know the truth about Native Americans, First Nations people of our land, and ultimately, I reached the point where in my 20s, I read a book which I highly recommend every American reads, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, the legacy of dishonor, of rape and plunder, of lies for the U.S.
So that book that he mentioned, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee was a great massacre and a great slaughter of the native people that were here, and which they were killed, they were murdered, they were butchered, and then they were thrown in mass graves. And the rest of them were marched out in the dead of winter until the middle of Oklahoma. A lot of the people, a lot of the natives, they didn't even make it. They died along the way. But you can research that for yourself. But I just wanted to make that footnote on that. So the so-called white man has to pay for that, man. He still hasn't paid for that. You know, he has a lot to pay for, okay?
Government towards the Native Americans could not be any more stark, and I will be the first one to say this is continuing to this day. They're trying to do the same things to the Hawaiian people that they've been doing to the Native Americans in terms of stealing away their sovereignty. We see now that when it even comes to sacred burial grounds, places that are of the most profound spiritual importance to the Native Americans, that they can't even stop a pipeline from going through it. And as some of these tribes people have said, ultimately there have been burial grounds that have been desecrated. And this is just a continuation. In fact, that's a very small crime compared to what many crimes have been committed against the Native Americans. And we see today on the reservations of North America that all of the Native Americans are the highest rates of heart disease, cancer, incarceration, domestic violence, incarceration, and all these sorts of things are pervasive throughout the reservations of North America. The policy towards the Native American people could hardly be any more grotesque.
And the obvious solution here would be to reroute the pipeline to avoid the native sacred land and away from this river they don't want to see contaminated. Why does that not seem to be an option by the oil company here?
Well, I have to say, I don't know what cost options they'd have for rerouting it, but obviously, when we look at a corporation that's trying to make money off of gas and oil and things like this, they're not really very concerned with the Native Americans' concerns. So anything that would cost them money, they're not likely to do. And when we look at the legacy of policies of the U.S. government towards Native Americans, again, I'm sure the oil company feels quite confident that it does not have to fulfill any of the needs of the Native American people. So, of course, why would they spend more money if they didn't need to? They'll just route it right through there and just bulldoze it through if they can.
Now, we know that Native Americans have a certain respect for land and nature that it's probably lies in direct contrast with the objectives of an oil company. Yet, the U.S. oil company has all the resources and the money that Native Americans don't have to fight this in court. What do you think your thoughts are on the natives' chances of prevailing in a court of law, federal or state, against this oil company in this matter?
Well, it's very important to note that the court system of America is very much like the rest of the court systems throughout the West and largely around the world. The system is completely corrupt. There is no constitutional law operating in the United States. Every red-blooded American who thinks they're a paid to face the fact that their country has been hijacked and that the U.S. Constitution is dead. The courts are nothing more than mechanisms for the system of power that's in place. So Native Americans can expect about the same chance, even worse actually, than anybody seeking lawful remedy within the courts of America. There is no real justice in America for the people or for people who are opposing major corporations and moneyed interests. Ultimately, the entire system is set up to protect the moneyed interest of those who run the country. So Native Americans and the rest of us effectively have no shot unless enough people are watching and it becomes a public relations problem, which isn't too likely given all the things that they can put in front of us to distract us. Unless there's a huge amount of attention that forces the U.S. court system to actually honor the law, I don't see any remedy for them there.
Thanks again, once again, for your contribution to our Press TV's Top 5, Mr. Peace activist and former U.S. Marine, joining us out of Antigua.
Yeah, so basically, to sum up what the guy said, he's basically said that there's not going to be any justice for the native people. You know, he doesn't expect it. You know, in those so-called white man's courts, but that's what our people get for trusting in the devil. That's what you get. You know. Now I'm going to go to Psalms 55, verse 21. Yeah, that's what our people get for trusting in the so-called white man's system. You know, trusting in his system. You know, you're not going to get justice from the so-called white man. You know, you're not going to get justice from the devil. All right, this is Psalms 55. I'll start at verse 20. It says he hath put forth into the shores of North America. The natives that were here, they were at peace with him, you know. And what did he do? He put forth his hands against them, you know. He became their enemy, you know. He drew first blood. He's the one that started the war between them, right? Because the natives were at peace with them, man. They taught them how to farm. They taught them, you know, how to survive the winters. They taught them how to navigate through the land. And what did he do? He committed genocide against them. He stabbed them in the back. So it says, he hath put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him. He hath broken his covenant, right? And what is a covenant? A covenant is an agreement or a contract, all right? And he's broken every agreement or covenant or contract that he ever had with the Native Americans, you know, with the Native Americans, with the Gadites and the Reubenites, you know, the North American Indians and the Seminole Indians, okay? You know, because he started out like he wanted a little piece of land. There was war, and then, you know, so-called white man would come with a peace treaty, and then the Gadites and the Reubenites, they would sign it, and there would be peace for a little while. Then the so-called white man would want more land. Then they would war again, and the same process happened over and over until they were pushed up into the corners, all right, into those reservations. So it's verse 21. It says, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter. Right, you know, because the so-called white man is good at giving you fair speeches, you know, lying and deceiving you. That's why he's called the devil. That's why we call him the devil, because the word devil means deceiver, a liar, a person that's good at deception, that's good at hiding their true colors or their true feelings or their true intentions. And that fits the so-called white man to a T. You know, so it's, you know, his words were smoother than butter. That's why the Native Americans, they trusted him. You know, they trusted Esau. They thought that, you know, Esau was their friend. But they quickly learned, you know, that he wasn't. So it says, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. You know, meaning war was in his mind. The word heart comes from the Hebrew word lab, which means mind. You know, in his mind, in his heart, you know, in his brain. All along he had it that he was gonna stab him in the back. It says, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. You know, they were drawn swords. You know, eventually, you know, he came against them. So from here, I'm gonna go to the book of Sirach, in Apocrypha, chapter 12, verse 10. I'll start at verse 10. It says, never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness, right? So the white man is our enemy, the so-called white man, the devil, Esau, or the Edomites as a whole. They're our natural enemy. They're our wicked counterpart, because they come from Esau. You know, we come, the Native Americans, the Gadites and the Reubenites, which are the Seminole Indians, and the Judites, which are known as the Negroes, you know, or they call American blacks. All the 12 tribes of Israel. You Negroes, you Latinos, you Native Americans, we all come from Jacob, our forefather Jacob, all right, who was a black man, a so-called black man. He was a brown man, a man of color, all right? So all the 12 tribes come out of him, okay? But the white man is our natural enemy. Going back to Jacob and Esau, they were brothers, they were fraternal twins that were fighting inside the womb. You know, which proves that they were natural enemies from even before they were born. So it says, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. Yeah, because eventually iron, you know, it'll appear, you know, nice and shiny or whatever. But eventually you're going to see that rust start to come through. And that's the so-called white man. You're going to see his true intentions eventually is going to come out, you know. So it says, Though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him. You know, you always got to watch him. He might act like he's your friend. He might act like he's humble. He might speak soft spoken. You know, he might speak kind words, or he might compliment you all the time. But the scriptures say, take good heed and beware of him. Meaning, don't be deceived by that. And thou shalt be unto him as if thou hadst wiped a looking glass, and thou shalt know that his rust hath not altogether wiped away. Yeah, because eventually you're gonna know that, you know, you're gonna see him for his true colors. Like it says, if you wipe a looking glass is a mirror. Like if you wipe a mirror, you're gonna see the truth. You're gonna see the truth, what lies in front of you. You know? And then it says, and thou shalt know that his rust had not altogether wiped away. Meaning you're gonna know by his deeds, you know, that he played you. It says, set him not by thee, lest when he hath overthrown thee, he stand up in thy place. And going back to the example of when they first came to the shores of North America, that's exactly what he did. Here it is, the Native Americans, they set him by them. You know, they had that feast, you know, what they celebrate today as Thanksgiving. You know, but if you go back, you know, in the history, you know, it was when the native took the so-called white man in, you know, and they had a feast, and it was, you know, and the natives treated them peacefully. You know, they shared their food with them and had a great feast. But what was the outcome of that? The outcome of that was the white man, you know, stabbing them in the back, you know, and overthrew him, like the scriptures say. So it says, set him not by thee, lest when he hath overthrown thee, he stand up in thy place. Right, and that's when he claimed that land was his land, you know. It was his land, you know, and he claimed it for at that time they claimed it in the name of Spain, or you know, or Española, you know, or Spain, with Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand. They claimed it for them, you know. It says, neither let him sit at thy right hand, lest he seek to take thy seat, which is saying the same thing. And thou at the last remember my words and be pricked therewith, you know, and you know, and at the last you're gonna remember, you know, what the scripture has said. You know, you're gonna remember the words of the Lord. It says, who will pity a charmer that is bitten with a serpent? Because that's what the so-called white man is. He's a serpent, man. He's a snake. Even the Native Americans, they said that the white man had a forked tongue. He speak with a forked tongue, meaning, you know, and what animal has forked tongues like that? A serpent, you know? It says, who will pity a charmer that is bitten with a serpent? Like a snake charmer that plays with snakes. If he gets bitten, ain't nobody gonna feel sorry for him. If he gets bitten by a poisonous snake and dies, nobody's gonna pity him, because he should have known not to play with a snake. You know, it's symbolic, it's parabolic talk for not trusting the so-called white man, woman, and child as a whole. It says, or any such as come nigh wild beasts. It says, so one that goeth to a sinner and is defiled with him in his sins. It says, who will pity? For while he abide with thee, but if thou begin to fall, he will not tarry. You know, meaning like if you go through adversity, whatever, and he's with you, he's not gonna help you out. He's not gonna stay with you. He's gonna flee and leave you to your own end. It says, verse 16, an enemy speaketh sweetly with his lips, but in his heart he imagineth how to throw thee into a pit. And that's right. That's, you know, he speaketh sweetly with his lips. You know, like now you got our people, 2/3 of our people, you Negroes, you Latinos, Native Americans, you trusting in the so-called white man system. You know, you're about to vote in this presidential election for a ruler over to rule over you, you know. And then you're voting for these candidates that speak sweetly unto you. You know, they speak sweetly with their words, with their lips. They have the smooth presidential debates. You know, on the campaign trails. You know, they have those fair speeches that our people get trapped up into. Right? But it says, an enemy speaketh sweetly with his lips, but in his heart he imagineth how to throw thee into a pit. Yeah, in their mind, they're further thinking about further ways to enslave you, man. Further ways to oppress you. Further ways to take away more of your land, to tax you. You know, to make you a bigger slave. Eventually, they want to put a microchip in you, man. You know, that's how they're gonna brand you as their slave with the RFID microchip, which is the mark of the beast. All right, and that's, you know, anybody that takes that, you know, that's a death sentence. You know, from the Lord, from Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai. You know, you're a dead person, man. Whoever takes that chip. You know, that's why the Lord has his prophets out here, his true prophets out here saying, don't take that mark. You know, don't take that microchip. All right. It says, verse 16 in the middle, it says, he will weep with his eyes, but if he find opportunity, he will not be satisfied with blood. You know? Yeah, the so-called white man, he acts like he cares about our people, but he don't give a shit. He don't give a shit about you Negroes, you Latinos, you Native Americans. You know, and once he finds his opportunity, man, he tries to commit genocide against our people, man. He does it every day. It says, if adversity come upon thee, thou shalt find him there first, and though he pretend to help thee, yet he shall undermine thee. And that fits the so-called white man to a T. It says, he will shake his head and clap his hands and whisper much and change his countenance. I mean, eventually he's going to reveal himself to be the devil, man. He's going to show his horns. All right. So that's it on that. From here, I'm going to go to Numbers, book of Numbers, 35, verse 33. Right. So it says, Numbers 35, verse 33. It says, so ye shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, for blood it defileth the land. Right? And how much was this land of North America polluted, man? How much blood did the so-called white man spill? He killed over 100 million Native Americans. You know, I mean, 100 million Negroes, so-called Negroes, over 77 million Native Americans he butchered, you know, to gain control of this land, and that was just back then, you know, during the slave, you know, the bulk of the slave trade. That's not even counting all the way up to right now, all the way up to 2016. Here it is, we're in September 2016. So there's a lot of blood that's been polluted, that's polluted this land. All right, there's a lot of people that's been of our people that genocide has been committed against them. So it says, so ye shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, for blood it defileth the land. And that's just one reason why America has to be destroyed, because this land is polluted by the blood of the children of Israel. It says, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. So the only way this land is going to be cleansed, it has to be shed. The white man's blood has to be shed on this land. All right? Okay? That's the way it's going to be cleansed. And what's the main avenue that the Lord is going to use for that? Is those nuclear missiles, man. Those ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missiles. That's what's gonna cleanse this land. All right? That's gonna be that fire, the fire that cleanses this land, and simultaneously, you know, is gonna destroy Esau, not the elites, but it's going to destroy the majority, the rest of the Edomites, and that's how this land is going to be cleansed. All right, so from there I'm going to go to Isaiah 33 verse 1. Isaiah 33 verse 1. It says, "Woe to thee that spoilest, and thou was not spoiled." Right, going back to the history once again, the so-called white man. He spoiled and he was not spoiled. And dealest treacherously, and they dealt not treacherously with thee. All right, because when the so-called white man came here, the natives that were here, they treated him kindly. They didn't deal treacherously. They dealt straightforward and direct, and in sincerity. To their fall, to their demise, but they did it in sincerity. And I have a book here. It's called "The Devastation of the Indies." Right, it's by Bartolome de las Casas. Right, and I'm just gonna read a few excerpts from it. This is from page 28. It says, "And of all the infinite universe of humanity, these people are the most guileless." Right? So this is talking about the Native American Indians that were here, Gad and Reuben, when the Spaniards came here. It said, and it says these people were the most guileless, meaning they didn't have any animosity, towards the Spaniards. It said the most devoid of wickedness and duplicity, the most obedient and faithful to their native masters. Going to, their elders of the different, native tribes. It said, and to the Spanish Christians whom they serve, those are, the Spanish Christians that came, that came to conquer them. It says they are by nature the most humble, patient, and peaceable, holding no grudges, free from embroilments, neither excitable nor quarrelsome. These people are the most devoid of rancors, hatreds, or desire for vengeance of any people in the world. So it says they're devoid of rancors, hatreds, or desires for vengeance of any people in the world. So going back to what I read, it says, and dealest, it says, "Woe to thee that spoilest, and thou was not spoiled, and dealest treacherously, and they dealt not treacherously with thee." And that's explaining just what the scriptures is saying. I'm gonna read another excerpt. This is page 29. It says, "Yet into the sheepfold, into this land of meek outcasts, there came some Spaniards who immediately behaved like ravening wild beasts, wolves, tigers, or lions." It says that had been starved for many days, meaning the Spanish conquistadors, they acted like beasts. They were comparing them to beasts, how they treated the natives. It says, and Spaniards have behaved in no other way during the past 40 years down to the present. It says, present time, for they are still acting like ravening beasts, killing, terrorizing, afflicting, torturing, and destroying the native peoples, doing all this with the strangest and most varied new methods of cruelty. So Esau has to pay for all of this, man. They were doing it with the most varied, and they were devising new methods of cruelty at that time. It says, never seen nor heard of before, and to such a degree that this island Hispaniola, once so populous, having a population that I estimated to be more than 3 million, has now a population of barely 200 persons. So they slaughtered the natives from what he estimated, from 3 million down to 200. So this is just some of the history that the so-called white man has done to our people, man. Has done to our people. But that's what our people got for trusting them, man. I'll read one more scripture. This is Ezekiel. I'm gonna go to Ezekiel 30. Book of Ezekiel 35, verse 5 and 6. It says, because thou hast had and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel. Now this is talking about Esau, the so-called white man, starting with the elites. You know, it's really dealing with the elites of Esau, you know, the elites of Edom, because they have had a perpetual, which means a constant hatred, and has shed the blood of the children of Israel. And shed the blood of you Negroes, you Latinos, you Native Americans. Those are North, Central, and South America. You know, those are Brazil, Guatemala, Panama, Argentina, you know, Mexico. You know, all of the 12 tribes. So it says, and has shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword. Going back to his blessing, Esau's blessing was the sword. It says, in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. Therefore, as I live, saith the Lord power, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. So the Lord swore by himself, the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, swore by himself. He said that as he lives, that he will prepare blood unto the so-called white men, you know, so-called white race, the Edomites as a whole. And blood is going to pursue them for all the blood that they shed. It says, since thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. So they're going to reap what they sow, what they have sown, man. You know, Galatians 6 and 7, be not deceived, the Most High is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Hey, so we're approaching the time where this so-called white man is about to reap what he has sown in the earth, man. He has sown rape, robbery, and murder, and he's about to receive of the same upon him. And with that, I want to say shalom. You know, all praises to Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai. And I hope our brothers were edified. Shalom. To the next video.